Welcome everybody to this 9X live session. So as usual, my name is Piv. I'm one of the co-founder of 9X. And today I will be joined for this marvelous session by not only one, but two incredible guests. We'll have Tom from the TravelPerk legal department. And we also have Maximilian from Whippet, which is a specialized lawyer who has been following closely the EU Act in the making for more than 2 years. So basically today, what we'll do is we'll try to cover, get an understanding of an overview of the regulation. And through that, Max is going to guide us, and we're going to try to have a very specific dynamics. Basically, Max will provide us with an understanding of the current state of the regulation. Then Tom will come at it and ask questions, make comments on the practical aspect of things, especially from the point of view of an internal legal department or legal team inside of a corporation, trying to make sense of what the regulation requires, what it actually means for us. And finally, I will also ask some questions whenever I still don't understand what the both have been talking about, to make sure that everybody in the room, if there's anybody else like me who doesn't have a legal background, but is a managing director or has responsibilities or liabilities, I'll make sure that we get also something out of this. So without further ado, Max, can you maybe walk us through the first part of the timeline of the applicability of the EU AI Act?
Yes, thanks for having me. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. So first of all, what is the AI Act? In particular, it's a regulation that establishes rules for the development, the use, the marketing, the putting into service, putting into market of AI in the European Union. And it aims to make sure that fundamental rights of the European citizens, are not like they are safe and in respect of those fundamental rights. One thing first, because it's often misunderstood, the AI Act does not forbid most of the AI usage we are currently using. So it does not forbid ChatGPT and so on. That is something that many people sometimes misunderstand and are a bit scared of the AI Act because it seems to forbid some AI usages, but that's not the fact for most of the things we currently use. Where does the AI regulation apply to? It applies to AI systems and general purpose AI models. To not bother you with many jurisdiction, I will just give you a short summary what AI systems and AI models are. So AI systems are systems with varying level of autonomy that infers from the input it receives how to obtain objectives and generate outputs. Typical example are AI agents, also ChatGPT, Sora, Microsoft Copilot, the AI companion that Zoom uses right now, for example, or also some smart camera functions in your smartphone. Corresponding the general purpose AI models that are the basis of the AI systems. For ChatGPT, the AI model would be the GPT-4o, for example, or as you know, diffusion models, LLMs, reasoning models, that are all GPI models. That for the basis, right now on the slide, you see the step-by-step entry into force of the AI Act. So as you can see on 2nd of February, the first obligations already applied. So right now, every company has to follow the prohibited AI practices and make sure that his staff has enough AI literacy. We'll go into this later because that is the main topic of today. But before we go into detail, I just want to make sure or want to show that there are more things to come. So 2nd of August, you have to comply with the obligations for providers of those GPI models like GPT-4o. Provider is OpenAI, so that will mostly not bother you. But many companies develop their own GPI models, and therefore you have to make a note on 2nd August of 25. Then next year, also August, the first high-risk AI obligations come into force, and the transparency obligations for so-called low-risk AI systems are coming into force. And then 2027, 2 years from now, the last high-risk AI obligations will apply. Just to make one thing sure, high-risk AI with comparison to Annex 1, so 2nd August of 27, might be a thing for those who develop tools with 5G, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, or other network devices or connections to them, because there is a radio equipment directive in Annex 1. And if you have a product that uses those techniques, you need to make sure the 2nd of August 27, that's your date that you have to comply with high-risk AI. But enough about what is in the future. Let's have a look on what we have to comply with right now. First of all, the prohibited
Max,
AI
can I just
practice.
ask you?
Yes, of course.
Just a quick question on the last side. So, in terms of what applies right now, the regulation is suspended with regards to those obligations it places on high-risk AI developers and deployers at the moment.
Exactly.
And the obligations are suspended until, say, the 2nd of August, 2026.
Yeah, well, they are not even suspended because they are not even into force. So they will apply in the future, but not right now. However, why is that the case? Because you need so much time to comply with them. If so the regulation came into force last August in 24. The industry said we cannot comply with high-risk AI obligations in 1 year. We don't have the power to do all the things that come with high-risk AI obligations within 1 year. We need more than this. And therefore, the high-risk AI obligations with Annex 3, that are the specific use cases like HR, like biometric identification for private use, like critical infrastructure and so on, they apply from 2nd August 26. And then those that need even more time, for example, machinery, cars, and so on, they apply from 2nd August 27. So right now, you have to keep in mind, or you have to focus on prohibited AI practices and the AI literacy, and very soon, the GPI model obligations for providers.
And just one question on that, Max. Are these the reason why we see that whenever there's a new feature which gets announced from OpenAI or from Anthropic, that they first get released in the US and it takes time for them to come to Europe? Is it because of some of the concerns, especially they have to comply with the regulation from GPAI models from the 2nd of August of 2025? Is it a question of, is it actually things that they have to obey to, or is it just like transparency and documentation purposes?
No, so part of those or of those concerns are the AI Act. For example, the GPI model obligations from 2nd August of 25, but there are other regulations that are right now more concerning. For those big tech companies from the US, that is, for example, the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act. The last one, the Digital Markets Act, was the main reason that Apple used, for example, or at least quoted, that they are not bringing Apple Intelligence into the EU for some months. I think right now it already is out here as well, but the Digital Markets Act was the main reason they stated that they will not or can't bring it that fast into the EU. But yeah, European regulation is often a reason why things get delayed. You could now say, well, that's bad for us. On the one side, it is. On the other side, it leads more or less to safer products. And if you keep in mind that those regulations want to protect the fundamental rights of all of us, it might even be a good thing. Everybody needs to like think about, is it worth for me or is it not worth? And also data protection, that is also often a key topic for those big tech companies.
Okay, awesome. So then let's move to what actually happened, because it's funny. I saw a couple of headlines, a couple of months ago, but actually there are some regulations which are already in place. So let's start with the prohibited AI practices, because I don't think they're impacting too many of us, but just to be sure that there's nothing illegal that we're doing. So what are the different types?
Yeah, so right here we have a very, very compromised overview of the real text of the AI Act. For example, the first one, um, it's it's bulk of text. We did not copy it on the slides. If one of your solutions come close to one of those examples, or you think, well, this might apply to us, you should definitely take a closer look at it, because there will go later on. There might be fines if you break those or act against those prohibited AI practices. We have some that, or we identified some that might be more important to you. And I will just give you an example for the first two that are highlighted right now. So a good example would be a chatbot that flashes brief visuals or exploits emotional dependencies of specific vulnerabilities of users in advertisement. So it's not seeable for the human eye, for example, or also music or tones that are not hearable or recognizable for our brain, but it still influences such our behavior. Or a close button that, for example, you use AI to identify where someone clicks the least time on his smartphone, and right there you position the close button of your commercial to extend and exploit this vulnerability of the person.
So what you're saying is that basically whatever every performance marketing person was doing or trying to optimize based on their metrics, they're not allowed to use AI to dynamically just generate that and customize that to every single visitor.
Exactly, but like I said, that is a compromised version. It also has to be to harm those people and to
Okay.
really have an impact. If it's not impactful, then it's also not forbidden. But if you use such a technique, you should look into the AI Act and check, well, might this be a case for us, or are we way out because we do not harm people? Of course, what is harm? But
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Pete's question repeated, but if you are in the gambling or alcohol industries, then presumably you come into scope here.
yeah, well, if you use AI for that, then you might be in that very, very soon. Yeah. Then you already, I guess those industry has already evaluated their own AI systems.
Okay.
Just to give you a short example, what also could be exploiting a person's vulnerability, there is the first class action filed against TikTok and X in Germany. And the accusation is that TikTok manipulates young users and misuses their sensitive data because they deploy addictive design strategies that exploit behavioral psychology to maximize the user engagement in the app. So, key point, the algorithms of TikToks are that good and that manipulative. That's at least the accusation, that they exploit especially the young people's vulnerability to sustain such influence. We don't know yet if that is the case, and therefore we should stay back and do not claim that this actually is proven. But at least they filed a suit, a case 2 days after the prohibited AI practices came into force on 2nd of February. So of course, they prepared it, but it's class action, and the damages that X and TikTok get sued for are multi-billions.
And these are like a consumer protection association, which are
Exactly.
just doing them. Okay. There's a
What-
couple of which I just wanted.
Wait, there
sorry,
was a question, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just going to jump in on one practice that stood out for me, particularly for anyone working in the ed tech space at the moment, is this idea of deriving emotions from a natural person in educational institutions. So a lot of people are talking around the personalization of ed tech and this idea that actually education will fundamentally transform and you will learn ambiently, through a system you interact with. And that system will only be good and great if it knows your mood, it knows the time of day you perform optimally. And it's quite interesting because I think there's a lot of greatness to the EU Act and they're miserable at marketing it. But when I see a prohibition like this, an absolute prohibition like this, I kind of, yeah, I kind of worry a little bit.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's also a compromise text, so it's not, or it's a short version of this text. So in fact, it's much longer and has some exemptions. So a good example of what is prohibited would be to use a webcam or voice recognition system in a call center to track the employee's emotions, such as anger or something like that, and connect it with like consequences for them, like performance issues or even canceling the contract. If you just use it for training reasons and it's not shared with HR responsibles, for example, then it might be allowed. So there is a thin line that you have to navigate on. And again, if you use emotion recognition systems in the workplace area, then you should look into detail into the AI Act Article 5 and find out if you are under one of those circumstances or not. Also, using emotion recognition systems during the recruitment process is prohibited. And again, if you use it in that way, then you're out and you need to make sure that you do not use them anymore. However, if you use them for other reasons, then you might have an exemption for you in the AI Act.
Okay, so basically the main understanding here is like if you're using or if someone in your organization is using AI for some topics which are somehow remotely related to these aspects, then you should actually just make sure to go and to check into this to make sure that you're actually complying or not. Just I wanted to take a look at two next before we move to the next step. AI-based social scoring. Can you just like, is it just to make sure that we are not becoming China, or what's the
Yes,
what's the reason behind this?
exactly. That is something. Mainly, it's also much longer, and it's very well, it's like a hot topic to call it AI-based social scoring, but it is to evaluate social behavior with the and with leads to for example, unfavorable treatment of certain persons or based on a social score on their prior social behavior over a certain period. So yeah, basically it's to not become China, but it's also to not force people to. So from the fundamental rights of view, it's to not force people to be scared in the public because they cross a red light, because they, I don't know, do something that the society thinks it's not that good, but it's not forbidden, or it is, or even it is forbidden, like the red light. But for example, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I guess some of us already crossed a red light. Yeah, but basically, it's do not become China.
Okay. Okay, so let's try to move forward and see, a bit on, the biggest topic, which is the one I think that, has the most impact for organization, which is the AI literacy. So I think we have a big definitions here. So this is basically what the AI Act is forcing as a mandatory or like a responsibility for the employer to actually provide to their employee. So can you explain a bit what is this concept of AI literacy and what are the main implications of the regulation that entered in force in February this year?
Yes. So just to make it short that nobody has to read it, it's mainly providers and deployers need to ensure a sufficient level of AI literacy with their stuff. That's it. That leads to three questions. Who is a provider and deployer? What is AI literacy? And what are key concerns? So first of all, provider and deployer. To make it easy, the provider is the one that develops an AI system or has it developed for them. So it's also contractual possible to let someone else develop it for you if you use it then under your own name. And the deployer is the one that takes an AI system from someone else and use it in his company without changing it. For example, if you use ChatGPT in your company, then the company becomes the deployer of ChatGPT in the circumstances. Just to clarify something, you can be provider and deployer at the same time. So if you develop an AI system in your company and then you use it in your company for your employees, for example, then you are the provider and the deployer at the same time, and both obligations apply to you.
Maybe one question on this, Max. Should we, like, if you're not building your own model, are you necessarily only deployers? Or, for example, if you're just fine-tuning a model, or if you are customizing so much, like if you're providing just knowledge to a model, like is there some technical definition or like that we can understand in our AI terms, or is it actually just is it a lawmaker term that has been written and actually it's difficult to understand what these are?
Well, there you hit something that is one of the most discussed topics in the process of the AI Act. So, let's talk about AI systems first, because models are something different again, but AI systems might be better to understand. If you develop your own AI system and you implement a model into it, you program a user interface that you can use the model, then you are the provider because you are the developer. If you don't do this and just use an AI system without changing it, you are the deployer. But if you, as a deployer, change the AI system, you use it in a different context, you give it a new purpose. For example, you use a recognition software for specific terms in documents, and you use it in HR. You implement it into your own HR process. Then you might become the provider of this AI system because you changed the way it works and you changed the risk that occur using this specific AI system in this specific context. That is also one key takeaway that everyone should really take care of. If you use third-party AI systems, you can become the provider of those if you change them or use them in a different kind of way than those that were expected or foreseeable for the provider. Now, just to make sure AI models, there are only obligations for providers. There are no obligations for deployers of AI models. But if you fine-tune an existing AI model, you probably become the provider of this new AI model because you developed this AI model. Yeah, it's not that technically correct that you developed the AI model, but you trained it, you fine-tuned it, and therefore you probably be the provider of the AI model.
Okay. And if we look at the implications for the different people, so in terms of AI literacy, like, so what are the main components of the AI literacy that you need to provide to your employees?
Well, you can mainly split into three columns. There's a technical component where the stuff that acts with AI, for example, the employees needs to understand the basic of AI systems and models, like I just explained them, and the risk going along with them. For example, the black box problem that you never know how the decision actually was done. Also, I think Claude yesterday or Anthropic yesterday announced that they could kind of understand how the black box worked, but still that is a big problem. And also that, for example, large language models predict the next words and they don't really have a knowledge base. That is a basic technical understanding that you need to train to your stuff and that everyone in the company needs to understand when they are acting with AI systems. Also, like I said there, like it's written there, you need to know about data management, about algorithms, about how to develop it if you actually develop or train models, because it's context-based. If you do nothing with AI systems or models in the development, then the technical component becomes much less important for you. Still, there is a minimum that you need to understand, but it's also always context-based. We will come to that in a second. For the legal
Max,
component,
just on
yes,
the context point then, if I work in an organization with 1,000 employees and only 250 of them are in products and engineering, and maybe a larger subset if I account the governance structures I embed in those, like our privacy and security teams, they need to know about AI literacy as it relates to these technical components. But I'm not sure my 400 strong revenue org needs to know it to the same degree.
no, exactly, 100% right. They don't need to know the same degree of AI literacy regarding the technical components. For example, they then need to know much more about, I don't know, the possibility of manipulation of this data by AI models in the ethical component or in the legal component. The marketing then does not need to know anything about or nearly nothing about technical component and not much about the legal component, but therefore much more about fake news, deep fakes, and for copyright law, they need to know much more than, for example, the one in HR that use it just to scan through files. So 100% right. It's context-based, and especially in large companies, you will have to implement a basic understanding for all, and then you need to update this understanding with specific context-based trainings. That is something that currently many big companies already published that they do this. There is a list from the European Commission where big companies reported about their AI literacy measures that they have already taken, and you can see through all of them, there is a basic training for all participants and for all stuff, and then there are updated individual context-based, shorter but more specific legal trainings for technical component, the legal component, the ethical component.
And in terms of the regulation, Max, is it like relatively clear, or is it more open? Like it is context-based, but we're not going to tell you which context calls for which specific
exactly.
training.
That is something that the companies have to decide themselves. So
Okay.
the regulator did not write in what exactly is what they expect for AI literacy. That's unfortunate. But there are also from the European Commission guidelines that you can use to understand what might be important for you. But to be honest, everyone in his company knows the best how they use AI, which AI they use, and can therefore identify what kind of AI risk might occur.
Okay, so basically you should have an understanding of the system that you're using, and then based on the context in which the user are going to use these systems, you need to basically provide them with like a common understanding of the different implications, which are based on the context in which they're using. So if you're using something for the marketing department, you need to be aware of the copyright limitation, stuff like this. If you are building technical solutions that implement an AI capabilities, then you need to have a more deeper technical-based understanding of how the system works. But I guess it's important that it is forbidden to let someone use AI without knowing the implication it can have, either for the technical aspect, the legal aspect, or the ethical aspect, based on the context that they are using it in.
Yeah,
some kind of common sense, or like it's not the Far West. It's
well, let's say it like this: there is now actually penalty if you don't have AI literacy in your company, but it's a regulation that protects customers and they are also natural persons and is therefore enforceable through court by other companies and, for example, consumer protection agencies. So there is no penalty, but you can, like TikTok right now and X in the lawsuit, it's also regarding AI literacy. You might not get a fine by the European Commission, but you might have to pay compensation to others. So
okay.
and also think about why we want AI literacy. We want AI literacy because we all want to act responsible with AI. We do not want to use AI in a way that other people are harmed without, for example, us knowing that this is the reason, or that we are the reason for other people that they are harmed by AI, because we had not the knowledge about what might be the implications of this specific AI in this specific context.
Okay. So can you understand that, do I understand it correctly that basically it's a bit similar to the GDPR in the first, in the early days, or someone can sue you, but for now there's no proper authority that's going to enforce this. So if you're a small company and you're not acting largely in public, you're kind of safe, or what's the how is it the wrong way to understand this?
So you are right with the point that it's early stages. Many people don't know what right now is about to come and how the authorities and the courts will review and evaluate different topics. That's correct. So you don't have like a common sense on what is good, what is bad, what you need to do, what you don't need to do. There's no national authority right now in Germany because of our government had some problems the past month, and therefore the bill did not pass. But it will come very soon. In other states like Spain, I think the authority already exists, and there's also the European Commission, which enforces everything in regard to general purpose AI models. So it's not actually like the GDPR, where we had only national authorities in every country, and then in some countries like Germany, 16 different authorities, or 17, but more like you have national authorities in every country for the enforcement of AI systems. However, AI models are enforced by the European Commission itself, and AI systems that are based on AI models and have the same provider. So one person develops AI model and AI system, puts them together. It's also enforced by the European Commission, not by the national authority. So there is an authority already, and you might be subject to fines.
Okay.
Yeah,
so I want to give you a couple of sorry, go for it, Tom.
I was just going to say, Beef, the way we look at this as well is that AI literacy is an opportunity. So we don't talk too much about AI literacy. We talk about the opportunity of the advantages AI brings and the fact that the more people know about it within the organization, the more well-placed we are to compound against that opportunity. I think the other thing and relevant piece of relevant directive is the Product Liability Directive, Max, which has recently been revised and brings within its scope AI systems. So you kind of have a situation where the AI Act is establishing what your duty of care is, and it can be enforced against you under the Product Liability Directive. And the significance of that legislation is you can be held liable without proof of negligence. So explainability then becomes paramount. Therefore, like having your ducks in order, having your assessments, the way you design, develop, and deploy these systems, having protocols around like embedding governance within that means that if you fall foul of the law in some sense, you at least go with good intent, with good documentation. That's a lot. That's kind of like our befuddled thinking at TravelPerk. I don't think anyone is nailing it, but that's a little insight into how we approach things.
Okay, and so that's explicitly sorry, just to understand, Tom, that's explicitly applied to if you are bringing somehow some AI features into the product that you're developing, then you have to be very careful about this because of the product liability that will integrate automatically the AI aspect of it.
Exactly, and the AI Act, and Max, please correct me if I'm wrong. You're far more closer to the detail and probably far more prudent than I am. But the AI Act essentially establishes your duty of care. And so, you kind of have to think about the two in tandem a little bit.
Yeah, well, so that's absolutely correct. The AI Act is a product safety regulation. So it wants to protect the human beings from danger. That sounds a little bit like, I don't know, big Hollywood, but So it mainly is to protect people, and the Product Liability Directive is then there to give people a chance to enforce the damages that they experienced, or that their data was published and so on. If the product itself, and the liability directive got updated and now does also apply to software and AI systems. So you can now enforce failures of the AI system through the Product Liability Directive, and therefore, for example, the AI Liability Directive, just to mix everything up, got cancelled. So we don't actually, so we don't know what happens right now because the AI Liability Directive got cancelled, but we are pretty sure as well that the Product Liability Directive will step in and close at least some of the gaps, and therefore AI systems are enforceable by private persons through the Product Liability Directive. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's take a look. I had a couple of questions. Maybe we've already answered them. So is everyone expected to have a full understanding of AI?
No,
so this I guess we covered.
It's an individual alignment of AI literacy based on the knowledge, experience, and training of the addressee and context-based.
Okay. Who can carry out these training courses? That's a good question.
Yeah,
should we specialize in the topic? Is it the juicy market?
I think so. I think so. Everyone can actually provide such training courses. You just need the knowledge of it. For example, if we do such courses, we always pair with someone who really understands the technical parts, because we as lawyers, we understand basic stuff, but for really, really hard technical stuff, we are also pairing with experts there. And companies like 9X can, for example, carry out such training courses in different ways.
That might be a bit, that might be a bit difficult. Maybe we can cover some of them, but I look at the technical side of things. We're not engineers. I look at the legal side of things. We're not lawyers. And at the ethical side of things, like I'm not sure we're the widest of all. So I think maybe on the basic level we can contribute something, but I'm not sure if we can go on the we can get you in safe place.
And just to clarify, of course, the company itself can do the training themselves. They don't need external help. They can use external help, but there is no obligation to go to a AI office schooling training or something like that. You don't also need an AI officer in your company. It might be smart to have a group or a person that handles AI topics centralized, but it's not an obligation that you need a so-called AI officer, like you need a data protection officer, for example, in GDPR. That was mandatory. AI officer? No.
And what's the on this part? Is it actually like from the point of view of the profession and the people who have been like watching the different regulation? Is this actually a possibility? Do you see this as just like GDPR potentially in the next couple of years? You will have to have someone in charge of documenting all the AI practices inside of the organization. And is this something that the lawmakers are pushing for, but the lobbyists are pushing against, and that might happen at some point? Or
well, it's super smart to use existing structures in the company and attach the corresponding responsibility and obligation from the AI Act. You currently have GDPR, Cyber Resilience Act, Cybersecurity Act, DORA. There are so many obligations that companies have to face right now that it makes no sense to have an AI officer, a cybersecurity officer, a DPA, a DPO, that. You need to make sure to compromise those things, to bundle, to set up bundles, and to centralize, for example, the documentation for data protection and for regulations like the AI Act, where you also have a lot of documentation obligations. That is super important, because else you will just blow up everything one day, because you can't have 100 person in your company just managing one regulation each. That will not work. At least I think that.
Yeah. And Tom, actually, it would be interesting to know, how do you guys are handling this at TravelPerk? Are you consolidating it? Are you having specific people for specialized in different aspects, or is it something that you've been already looking into?
Yeah, so I think conceptually at a high level, we're saying we want to run a resilient business and we don't want to take advantage of customers or employees. So like that's kind of what this legislation, what GDPR,
That's a good base. It's a good
yeah,
base to
what
start.
anything in the security space is kind of focused on. So then I absolutely agree that some of these core principles, and they are only core principles, I see questions in the chat about training, actually come into existing workflows, existing structures. And one of the reasons for that that we haven't just discussed is we have security and privacy teams embedded in our project and engineering squads. So they are absolutely the right people to scale these principles into processes they already support. And they already support them at the relevant touch points at which this is relevant. So when you're designing a new workflow or a new interface at TravelPerk, you are aware of any personal data you might be capturing. And therefore, it isn't too much of a bridge to also be thinking about, like, is AI being utilized to power that workflow, to power that engagement with the customer, to determine the next path that customer might follow? So yeah, very much it's a case of our privacy and security teams really leading the charge on this. And then a little bit of a leadership accountability mechanism, because they are very conscious, and I'd be really interested in Max's take on this. But already we are seeing, not just with the EU AI Act, but with other initiatives, including matters like ESG, where the EU is deregulating. And I think we've even seen it. There's a component of it which we've seen with the EU AI Act as well, Max, earlier this year with the corporate liability stuff. So there's a leadership accountability mechanism which is that designed to challenge too much swell of governance structure coming in, because this technology is so nascent, people don't want to be ground down before they've even sort of built or innovated. So it's a really interesting dichotomy, that.
Yeah, well, I think we see some deregulation, that's true. Also, in the past weeks, we had some influence from abroad, from the US, that wanted to deregulate everything. That will not happen. And still, the CEO will be responsible for everything in his company. He can then delegate things and so on. But yeah, it's true that they try to validate what we currently have on obligations, and how can we simplify obligations? How can we not publish another regulation with another documentation that already exists in three other regulations, and therefore make it easier for companies, especially the medium and small-sized companies, to comply with those upcoming acts. But to be honest, I haven't seen so much of actually doing in this area. So there were a lot of words and a lot of promises, but I haven't really seen a lot of deregulation right now.
Before we move forward, Max, we have a couple of questions in the chat which I think can be interesting. So and I think that speaks to what you were just mentioning. We have David who was asking that once you have done everything that you can to ensure compliance with the AI Act, especially on the AI literacy, like, can you get a sign off, or is it all self-regulated until there's a problem, or is there a tool or resource, or can you get an audit? Like, is there ISO certification in Germany, or what's the process there?
There are many certifications right now that you can collect, like you collect trading cards when you were young, but there isn't the one audit, as far as I know, that really that you can comply with, and then you are fine. That is not yet there. That might come in the future, but right now there is not the one and only solution. There are many providers that provide AI literacy courses, as we do as a law firm from time to time for our clients, but there is not the certificate that we can sign and hand over to you, and you can say, hey, I got everything that I need to know. It's a process that you have to update from time to time because AI changes, the risk changes. But no, there isn't the one and only certificate. But there are many certificates that you can achieve and that you can comply with and that you can collect, which is also good, like Tom said already, to have something in your paperwork that you can hold up and say, hey, I took part of, for example, today's presentation. I took part of a course for AI literacy there, and I got the certificate XY. That's good, but it's not sufficient to 100% be sure that you covered everything.
Okay, so basically you can demonstrate good faith and try to get, as Tom was mentioning, I think you need as much as possible, you try to get your ducks in order, but it's not like you can have something just signed off and get a stamp of approval and you know you're safe. Awesome.
I also saw one question earlier regarding call centers that use emotion detectors to detect when a customer is angry. Well, that is not in workplace. That is not forbidden or prohibited. If it's emotion recognition regarding a customer, then this might be high-risk AI system regarding to Annex 3. So 2026 might be a very important date, but it's not prohibited itself. It might be prohibited if you use supplemental techniques, or it might be prohibited from a data protection point of view, because emotion is a sensible data. But if you just use it to detect the customer emotion, then this does not apply under emotion recognition systems in workplace area.
Awesome. I just wanted to move forward with some just practical, compliance measures or things that you can do. I think you did a good work of basically just, let's try to summarize a bit, a couple of questions. So what should I do as a business owner right now with regards to, so obviously make sure that I'm not, leveraging any of the prohibited AI practices. I think this one is relatively, safe to assess, or if you have a feeling that you are borderline to something which might be forbidden, you should get in contact with Max and ask them to take a look at what you're doing.
Yeah.
But then what else?
So first, identify your AI systems and your AI models and categorize them. You need to know what you have in your company right now, and you need to know if it's high-risk AI, not high-risk AI, so low-risk AI, for example, if it's an AI model, or if it's even worse, an AI model with systemic risk, or and that's the worst if you have prohibited AI practices, because then you need to make sure that you do not have them anymore and do not use them. Second,
actually on this, Max, sorry, just one question on this. What about like shadow IT? What about the tools which are not officially, purchased by the company, but someone is expensing it somewhere? He got his hand on a company credit card, and he's using a solution which is, not just still approved by the organization. How does this work? Like, is there anything in the regulation?
Very problematically, the person that uses it is then not using it for personal stuff anymore, but for professional stuff. Therefore, the person does not comply with the AI Act, with prohibited AI practices, and also the company might not comply with the AI Act. But that is something we need to look at how the courts will deal with that. It's not yet set in stone.
Okay, now that we get even more pressure from the IT security departments, wherever we're working, blocking every new access to every new solution out there.
Yeah, so identify your AI systems, make sure you have no prohibited AI, then start the training of AI literacy in your company, context-based, and make sure that you meet the next deadlines in August 25, August 26, August 27. Who enforces the regulation?
I think this
we had that already.
Exactly. And then finally, what are the potential consequences of not compliance? I think that's the big one. So is it only consumer association taking us to court? I think if that's the case, with those small fishes, we won't be able to pay for the legal fee anyway, but what else?
Well, unfortunately, they thought about the regulator thought about increasing the fines. Also, GDPR was not enough. Now there is up to 7% of the worldwide annual turnover of the company if it violates the rules for prohibited AI practices, and up to 3% of its worldwide annual turnover regarding other violation of other obligations of the AI Act. Next to that, the authorities have the power to request appropriate measures to bring something back into compliance, or implement additional mitigation measures for risk mitigation, or even to withdraw the AI system or model from the market and from the customers. That also might be a big thing that hits companies if they have to withdraw their AI system, which is mostly provided as a service from a special market.
Awesome. So there's still a chance for Mistral to make it. They just need to hope that the EU Commission just bans OpenAI and Anthropic. That's good to know for the French economy.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions in the chat? Jan, is there anything that we haven't answered yet? We have a couple of more minutes for this session. Or do we cover most of things?
I will just go through.
There was just a question from Judith, also a bit about like the fact that we'll probably need to look at like train the trainer programs, because obviously this is getting quite a lot. There's quite a different things to cover. Also understanding like the context of every single employee and how that varies. So yeah, would also be interested to know a bit more on the training side. And is this something that, do you think along with this, will governments be thinking about giving certain subsidies to companies to offer these trainings, or like to develop these training programs?
Sorry, just before you answer, Max, because Tom has to jump soon in 1 minute. So I just want to make sure if anybody is interested in following, the legal advices or any more information that Tom has to share, we'll share in the chat right now Tom's podcast. Can you just in few seconds, Tom, explain what you're discussing in this podcast that the people here might be interested in?
Sure, yeah, thanks for the shameless plug, Pete. Yeah, so Alex Herity and Alex is Director of Legal Solutions at Adidas. We interview founders of legal tech companies. We interview people working in the judicial system. We interview people working in private practice law firms. And invariably, it all centers around, we get their thoughts, predictions on how the law will evolve in the short term. And it always seems to be the short term. So that's that. But it's been great to come on. Thanks for having me on, Pete, Jan, and Max. And I hope it was of some use to your audience.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Thanks for having joined us. And then we get back to answers. Cheers, Tom.
Bye.
So Max, sorry for the interruption.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I just need to think about what
I think we're on train the trainer, right?
Yeah. So everyone in the company that deals with AI needs to have this level of AI literacy. So also the CEO, also managers, everyone. Of course, it's very useful to have a trained CEO, because it's his obligation to make sure the company is in compliance with the AI Act. If he fails to bring the company into AI Act, he might be responsible. And also, and that is something we have seen in many crises in the automotive area, they might get visited by the state prosecution, because it might be a criminal offense if you, as a CEO, do not make sure your company is in compliance with the regulation. So yeah, I think there will be a lot of train the trainer. I don't think that the government will push very forward into this. If I understood you correct, I think that was also one of the questions. But I don't think that the government will take a big place into that. Unfortunately, that would be great.
I think we had another question, really practically, like, because I think that's where we're having difficulty. We come more from the technical side of things, or like the practical usage side of things. If I just build a custom GPT for my organization, so it's just basically a little bit of wrapper, but I just bring a bit of couple of documents into a knowledge base. I make that and I publish that into the OpenAI organization for my company. Does it make me a provider already, or am I just a deployer? Because that's a
Oh,
feature.
wow.
That's a feature from OpenAI, but I'm just putting some context in there.
Wow, that's a tough question. First of all, of course, I can't give some like binding
course.
legal advice here
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now. But it also, well, it depends on how much you change the system itself. If you
Okay.
provide so much data and so much, yeah, so especially in a GPT like in ChatGPT, if you use one of the custom GPTs and provide so much data that you then change the way it answers, for example, in a sufficient enough way, then you might become the provider.
Okay.
However,
Okay.
which is very important, if you choose to set up this GPT and use it in a for example HR case, then you will be pretty sure become the provider because you set a new purpose to this specific GPT.
Okay. Okay.
At least you should be aware of this possibility and have double check.
Okay.
Therefore, I would
Okay.
recommend Article 25 of the AI Act just to give some special insight.
Okay, and I guess that's a good plug to, if you're doing something like this and you're not sure, you should reach out to Max and have him cover, or just have a first chat on understanding why, if and whether you need to have some consult on the topic.
Yeah, I just saw a good comment. Build its custom GPT to understand the AI Act. Perfect.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's definitely something we need to do.
Please
Do you
post
have
it
any
on
more
LinkedIn
questions?
then, because we tried in the past as well.
Awesome. Yeah, do we have any more questions, or is that did we cover everything?
No, I think there was just a couple of people that had to leave, but share their thank yous. So I think that was most of the from the chat. A lot of people just saying thank you and that it was a super valuable session.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Max, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
I'm not sure if I understand better the regulation, but that might be because I'm just not legally savvy enough. But no, at least to shed some light on some of the all the buzz around the legislation. I think it will be very interesting to see. Maybe we need to do that again, in 6 months from now, and see how things are, unfolding. Whether it's going to be stricter, maybe it's going to be, a bit more lighter. Curious to see how this evolves.
They're destroying our summer holidays every year. We always have to look out for August. Every year this is the big day. Why can't they do it like December or like January is depressing enough? Just put it in January.
Yeah. It's so that they can sue the French company because everybody is on vacation in August, so they just go. All the associations are going to start suing the French companies and hoping they don't respond in time.
I will just write that down. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Max, and thanks everybody for joining. Have a good evening, and yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any further questions for Max.